Imagine navigating the Earth's largest, most violent oceans literally millennia before the compass was even a thing. Pretty wild, right? Well, welcome to this explainer, where we're going to embark on an absolutely epic journey into the deep past. We're exploring one of the most astonishing, yet kind of overlooked chapters of human history. We're tracing the wakes of a civilization that didn't just adapt to its environment. Actually, scratch that. It wasn't just adapting. It was total, unparalleled mastery of the largest feature on our planet, the ocean. Get ready because we are about to completely rethink everything you know about ancient exploration. So, who were the world's first true ocean conquerors? When we think of legendary historical seafarers, our minds almost automatically jump to European explorers during the Age of Discovery. But the truth? The ancestors of the Austronesian people mastered the unpredictable open seas thousands of years before European galleons ever even left their ports. No compasses, no modern maps, just sailing into the vast blue using nothing but the stars, the temperature of the currents, and the wind. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the undeniable footprint they left behind. Just look at the linguistic connection here. Across Indonesia, the Philippines, Hawaii, and all the way down to the Maori in New Zealand, the foundational words for things like I, to, and stone are incredibly similar. We're looking at a cultural network that stretches an unfathomable distance, from Madagascar off the coast of East Africa, literally all the way across the globe to Easter Island in the Pacific. It's a network spanning more than half the circumference of the Earth. No way that's a coincidence. And that incredible, almost unbelievable spread brings us to a frankly staggering number, 380 million. That is the estimated number of modern speakers of the more than 1,200 Austronesian languages alive today. So this isn't just some dusty ancient history. This is a massive, living, breathing demographic reality that fundamentally shapes the modern world, especially across maritime Southeast Asia and the Pacific. Okay, so let's get into part one, the origin, out of Taiwan. To really understand how they achieved this global footprint, we got to travel back in time and find their starting line. And surprisingly, the geographic root of this massive population points straight to Taiwan. Let's trace this epic timeline together. Around 3000 BC, we see the roots of the Proto-Austronesians in Neolithic Formosa, which is modern-day Taiwan, starting with the Tapan culture, who were already using early outrigger canoes. From there, jump to 2200 BC, and a massive southern expansion kicks off into the Philippines and the Indonesian archipelago. By 1500 BC, the distinct Lapita culture pushes way eastward into the vast Pacific, eventually reaching Hawaii and New Zealand. And incredibly, by around 1000 AD, a western branch sails all the way across the Indian Ocean to settle Madagascar. It's just a phenomenal migration. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why the Austronesians developed so completely differently from their mainland neighbors, like the Han Chinese, despite originating so close to the coast. It all comes down to ecology and millennia of isolation. The mainland Han Chinese built this huge agrarian terrestrial empire around massive river valleys, developing tonal languages and Confucian philosophies. The Austronesians, on the other hand, had to adapt to an island ecology. Their environment literally demanded outrigger canoes, stilt houses, and a cosmology deeply rooted in the spirits of nature and the ocean. Two entirely distinct trajectories of human civilization springing up right next to each other. And if we look at the indigenous Taiwanese tribes today, who are the direct cultural descendants of that original Formosan starting points, we see an incredibly rich tapestry of beliefs that command a lot of respect. Take the Paiwan, for example. They have this highly equitable social structure where the firstborn inherits chiefdom regardless of gender. They also traditionally refuse to plant rice, sticking strictly to millet so they wouldn't anger the millet spirits. The Bunun developed a complex system where you inherit a vital spirit, or hanidol, from your father. The Tsu share a really beautiful origin myth where a goddess created humans from tree leaves, and the Atayal live by a strict ancestral moral code known as Gaga, where violating the law risks disaster for the whole village. Moving right along to part two, the superpowers. We're looking at their maritime tech and architecture. So how did people with such deeply localized traditions manage to spread across the globe? Well, it comes down to their brilliant engineering. First, let's look at how they lived on land. Traditional Austronesian architecture is an absolute masterclass in sustainable, climate-adapted design. They built these magnificent structures on wooden stilts to elevate themselves above floods, damp earth, and wild animals. Their roofs were high and saddle-shaped, often looking kind of like inverted boats, which gave them brilliant cross-ventilation for the humid tropics. And here's the absolute craziest part. These massive structures were assembled entirely with precision-carved wooden pegs and natural fiber bindings, completely free of metal nails. You can still see this genius today in traditional houses like the Tongkanan in Toraja or the Rumagadan in Sumatra. So the crucial point is their absolute mastery of the water. The invention of the outrigger canoe was the ultimate key to conquering the violent open ocean. By adding a double outrigger, these balancing floats on either side of the main hull, they achieved just incredible stability. This specific vessel was the game-changer that allowed them to leave the sight of land, navigating thousands of miles using only their deep knowledge of the stars, the flight paths of birds, the temperature of ocean currents, and the direction of the wind. Which brings us to Part 3, Cosmology. Let's dive into Mana and Tapu. You see, they didn't just view the world as a physical space to be conquered. To them, the physical and spiritual worlds were completely intertwined. Central to this entire worldview is the concept of mana. Now, mana wasn't just a myth. To them, it was an invisible, vital energy, a literal spiritual power that physically flows through the universe. It resides in large ancient trees, in sacred heirloom objects, and in specific individuals, like prominent chiefs or skilled navigators. Basically, having high mana meant having authority, success, and a really deep connection to the cosmic order. And because mana was so potent, it had to be carefully managed. Enter the concept of tapu. Tapu was this strict system of cosmic religious prohibitions designed to protect people from places or objects with overwhelming mana, and essentially to prevent cosmic disaster. And hey, if that word sounds a little familiar to you, it's because this ancient Austronesian concept is the direct, literal origin of our modern English word taboo. Mind-blowing, right? Let's move to and see how this builds into their views on life and death, specifically through the incredibly sacred practice of secondary burial. Death wasn't seen as a final end, but a transition. First, a deceased person was buried or placed in a temporary resting spot. Then later, in a highly ritualized process, the bones were carefully dug up, meticulously cleaned, and placed into sacred clay jars, or famously, boat-shaped coffins. Why a boat? Because the afterlife was viewed as a final great ocean voyage returning back to the homeland of the ancestors. This deep, enduring respect for those who came before them is known as ancestor veneration. They believe spirits, called hyang in parts of Indonesia, anito in the Philippines, or aitu in Polynesia, actively watched over the living. To communicate with these spirits, communities relied heavily on spiritual mediators, very often female shamans, who would lead healing rituals or read omens from the flight paths of birds. Now, historically speaking, maintaining this cosmic balance sometimes involved intense practices, like headhunting, which was a widespread ancient custom conducted for ritual prestige and spiritual equilibrium. They also grounded their spirituality right in the earth itself, building massive megaliths, stone terraces, and towering menhirs to create physical bridges to the spirit world. Finally, let's wrap up with Part 4, the legacy and modern Austronesian identity. All of this incredible history, this advanced technology, this intense spiritual devotion, it didn't just vanish into the pages of a history book. Today, while the vast majority of Austronesian descendants practice major world religions like Islam or Christianity, those ancient ancestral beliefs survive beautifully through syncretism. You see it everywhere, in vibrant modern harvest festivals, in the deep cultural importance placed on visiting the graves of elders, in local traditions like Kejawen in Java or Madapu in Sumba, and in an enduring, profound respect for nature. The ancient worldview seamlessly blended right into the modern one. Which leaves us with a pretty provocative thought. With over 380 million people speaking an Austronesian language today, from the coasts of Africa all the way to the islands of the Pacific, this legacy is woven into the very fabric of global humanity. So consider this for a second. How much of this ancient seafaring blood, this ancient language, and this rich, vibrant culture is alive in you or the people around you right now? It's an absolutely incredible heritage, a story of oceans, ancestors, and unyielding identity. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I highly encourage you to just keep exploring.